His transportation unit became trapped in a time eddy. At the moment, he can do no more than advise.
We've joined the Doctor as he travels the Vortex and landed at a special Time Eddy edition of Traveling the Vortex. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
Well, now I know I have a show title.
Woo!
Good. Yay.
Yeah.
Did you guys have a good con?
Exhausted. Well, I had a great con. It was fantastic, but I think I did it wrong this time because a lot of people go to a con, pick up the con crud, and then for the next week they're sick. I did it in reverse. Picked up the crud before I went to the con and probably infected everybody.
You were the cruddy.
I was the cruddy. Or the crudder.
The crudder, I guess, yeah.
So everybody that received it was the cruddies, I guess. Yeah, no,
so that's how that happens, everyone.
And I powered.
People like Glenn.
I powered through the week at work because I knew that if I called in sick, it was going to look really bad because they all knew I was going somewhere for the weekend. And I knew they thought, he just called in sick Friday so he could go early. So I powered through the week. Probably worse. The worst was Friday. And it just hit me hard. And so took some, over-the-counter cold medicines and powered through it. And I actually felt very good on Saturday. You guys noticed Saturday night I was dragging because it was bad. And then Sunday I started feeling
You
better.
did seem a lot better on Sunday.
Yeah, I was. Well, when I finally went and stopped before we went to dinner and got Dayquil.
Oh, yeah.
And I got the Dayquil-NyQuil double pack because I knew I was going to need some overnight. When I finally got the Dayquil, that helped me get through the rest of the evening, but we went back and crashed. But no, we're not talking about crud. We're talking about the con, which was the positive part of this weekend.
Fantastic.
It was fantastic. Now, unfortunately, not unfortunately. Fortunately, it was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We weren't able to attend because of work commitments all around. Because Sean ended up not being able to go on Friday because Mel wasn't able to get Friday off. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So you guys went up. You guys went up late Friday, but didn't get to go to the con on Friday. But we all joined together on Saturday morning. So
I think, as much as I've enjoyed all the other cons we've done, I think I had the most fun at this one.
Intimacy.
It was so much fun.
No pressure.
No.
You don't feel like you had to rush to get things done. There's no lines. I mean, there's lines, but people want to see these people. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't you walked into a room and it was barren. But
it wasn't overly crowded.
Yes, and that's what I liked about the Planet Comic Con in the early days. Don't get me wrong. Planet Comic Con is phenomenal now, and I love that they're getting exactly. But the intimacy of being able to walk up and talk to these guys and have some time with them, and how I imagine Gallifrey was probably in the beginning, and how people talked about Chicago TARDIS being now is still sort of an intimate con. Now, that's not to say I don't want this to grow and get bigger, because if they got more crowds last year, or this next year as opposed to last year, if they end up doing it next year, I hope they do. Cross my fingers. I hope it gets bigger and gets more popular and get more people
absolutely.
there. But it was so nice to be able to really have time to talk to these people and run into them in the hallway and brush elbows with them, and then
on just the fans,
getting together with like-minded
great.
fans, and that's the other thing.
I think part of my
being so concentrated on Doctor Who.
Yes, exactly.
Everybody had that common connection because
you guys have. Sean's old hat at this at Doctor Who conventions, and you've been to one now, and this is my first true solo Doctor Who convention, and I just ate it up. Just the fact that everyone was here enjoying and loving on this show that we all enjoy so much, it was just did my heart good.
I feel a little bad from the standpoint that I don't feel like I got to do as much of the paneling and some of the other things as I always do every time I come back from con. I was like, man, I wish I'd have knocked out another panel. But just being able to sit out in the atrium, in the heart of everything going on around you, and have conversations with people.
See the costumes
fans, talking
go
with
by,
Mike and just shooting the breeze about Who.
So many great conversations just about the show we love.
Yeah, it was rejuvenating. It was like dipping the tree roots in the magic stream and going, I'm ready to. Yeah.
Well, and I think the thing that you guys, I'm a different kind of con goer. You guys have spotted it because I kind of go off and I people watch. I go sit.
Yeah.
And I like that element
doing
of it.
that
And the
too.
best thing about this one is you're people watching with and you're more engaged in conversations when you're. I would rather just like to be there and absorb the essence of it. I don't find myself needing to run to every panel to get it. That's one of the things that frustrates me about large cons is I feel like I spend so much time in a line getting the 1 or 2 autographs that I want that I'm missing so much other stuff. I don't get that relaxing sit down and just chat with people. That's part of the reason at Planet Comic Con I set aside time to go into the game room just to go in there and be with people in a common area and just kind of relax and absorb everything. And so this was that because you could be right there in the center of everything with the atrium and sit down. You saw me every time I'd find a couch, go sit down, just kind of relax, just drink
absorb it all
in. If I was ready to get up, go in the dealer room, look at dealer stuff, I'd go up and go look at dealer stuff. If I was ready to get up, go get my autograph, I'd go up and get my autograph. Ready to get up and go to a panel. That was one of the reasons we were sitting on those one couches because our panel was right next to it. But that's the kind of con that I love. And again, there's nothing disparaging to any other cons that we go to because they are a different beast. But this one is so much fun because of that intimacy and that personalization of it. And the one single topic that is the focus.
I think the single topic helps a lot for it too, because instead of like British Fest, which is a nice intimate con, there's just everyone's focused on the same thing and the same subject, and instead of I like this, well I don't really like that, I like this instead. It's unity more than anything else.
Exactly.
And the celebrities were wonderful.
This hotel was fantastic too.
Yeah.
I liked the venue for this. Now I was a little, I'll be quite honest, I was a little skeptical about how the paneling was set up because they had the one large atrium for the big panels, which I think was perfect.
Worked really well.
It could
have used a better sound system.
Yeah, better sound system, but it was off on its own. It was a large room, very accommodating for a lot of people.
It reminded me a bit of the original Planet Comic Con.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big con room.
Very accommodating, and it had a perfect staging area. You could see from anywhere you were in there. And so that was good. The other panel tower, which I thought was odd at first, but actually I kind of enjoyed it once we got in doing our panel, was having the other panels being in that little
like
atrium area.
Panel. That's
it
what was
felt
nice
like you were
about
sitting down just engaging with people that were there talking with you.
The only struggle there was
there was so much close by
hearing what was going on. We almost needed to have those situations over on the putting greens.
Or over by the pool table area because there was kind of an open area between the shuffleboard area.
That's what I mean.
The putting greens I think would maybe of course nobody putted the whole weekend we were there, so we could have been on the putting greens, I suppose. But
it was just sometimes hard to hear.
Agreed.
That was the only downside.
And I think maybe next year if we do kind of the same thing, we'll just take charge and be there early and move everything a little further away. But
because
this is where the panel area is. Not even if we'd moved like 15, 20 feet, it would have been better. But again, once we sat down and started talking to people and engaging people, it was much more. It was much more intimate.
That was one of the funnest panels I've done.
I agree. I completely agree.
And if you're joining us after finding us at that panel on New Who, welcome. We obviously had a blast talking to you. I was a little. I had to kind of reset my brain a little bit because when you announced, we're going to do this convention and we're over here at the Best Western, and it was kind of like, I remember doing those at those kinds of. Okay, yeah, because you get so used to what has come with bigger
convention centers as opposed to hotel convention centers.
Okay, so it's
even British Fest has moved up to convention center.
Oh, yeah, is that right?
Yeah, it was more of a convention center than a hotel.
Yeah, the Mid America Center was. Yeah, but. So that we were going to be, and then you walk into this place, and it's very obviously one of those. It looks like almost like an older motel that they had put the atrium area was, the outside maybe it was a parking lot or a pool or something, because there's exterior brick walls, but you're inside, and it's just like this is a little
without
odd.
the dome.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of the guests apparently were just bemused by the whole.
Oh, is it?
Is this what American architecture is like?
Colin Baker was struck by the fact that it looked like they were on the set of The Prisoner. Because they had the railing around the big, and almost like you had the prison yard, and then the railing where the guards would stand.
It's a 2-story thing, and the balcony rooms looked
out
down
into
onto the
thing.
So there was the guys up there with machine guns, maybe. But I don't mean to diminish it in any way. I think they for what they had, I think they did a fantastic job setting it up, laying it out. I enjoyed the venue a lot.
It could have been utilized a little better.
I think there were a couple things organization-wise that maybe they could have improved on with how things were set up. But then
again, it's an early con. This is the first year, and everybody in their infancy takes that first year to realize what worked and what didn't work, and they always start to make changes from there. Planet Comic-Con was the same thing. In fact, Planet Comic-Con has become so well-oiled because of they do look at the past experiences and they look to the future and they say, this is what we did good and this is what we can do better.
And they also go to other cons to see what they do well.
And the reason I go back to them is because that's one of the ones that I've been to year after year after year and seen how they've completely grown and worked that machine out. And I can see Time Eddy doing the same thing, saying, okay, this is what worked this year, this is how we'll do it next year. And it'll work better off.
I think so too.
But again, everybody was super friendly.
Yes.
Everybody was the fans were great. The guests were great. The dealer's room was great. They had a lot of
spent way too much than I probably should have in the dealer's room.
Tulsa TARDIS.
Oh, that TARDIS was gorgeous.
Yes, it was. Yeah,
and they told us it's the most screen accurate TARDIS in North America. And there's no denying it is a beautiful.
I haven't seen the rest of the screen accurate ones to say definitively it is, but I'll take their word for it.
It is the most screen accurate one that I have come across so far.
Agreed. Well, at least current screen accurate.
Yeah. Well, some of the ones we've seen look quite a lot like
like Collins.
Like Collins. The distressed TARDIS.
Yeah.
But no, it is a gorgeous. I do not mind giving them my money to take that picture.
Was Collins distressed?
Collins
that was kind of the lighter blue.
That puts Doctor in distress even more perspective.
Yeah.
Doctor and TARDIS in distress.
Well, the amount of work that Colin did to it too. It would, every time we'd come to a Colin episode and he'd have one of the roundels off and having wires pulled out, it really felt like the TARDIS was getting to be a fixer-upper.
Not to mention, he was the only one that fixed the chameleon circuit. And it actually did change twice.
It worked.
So maybe it forgot what the exterior was supposed to look like, and it looked a little more worn.
Yeah!
Headcanon accepted.
That's why it changes size, too. But, I think just across the board, the costumes were great.
A lot of great costumes.
Oh, a lot of
Missies. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Lots of Missies.
The Yeti costume that was there was
phenomenal.
fantastic.
The only thing that I lament is I was so, and I'm going to blame the cold meds on this. I was so just kind of, number one, in awe of being at a Doctor Who convention in the Midwest, in Kansas, and then also being under the influence of cold medicines. I didn't take as many pictures as I had intended to.
I walk away from every single convention and say I didn't take as many pictures as I should have.
I do too, but I walked away from this one going, oh, everything that I've done in the past has surmounted the amount of pictures I took at this one.
This was still even small for me.
Yeah. But luckily Sean and Mel had taken a ton of pictures, which they've already posted some of them online, which is wonderful. So. Yeah.
And with all things, if you go to our Facebook page, because they're on my page right now, and you're welcome to friend me on Facebook.
Page,
I don't care.
Do the same.
We'll eventually get them all lumped together and posted not only on our website but also on the Traveling the Vortex Facebook page. And if you see yourself in a photo, tag yourself. Yes, by all means, that is a standard thing. You don't have to contact us and ask. If you would want to contact us, fantastic. We're not going to shy you away. But just tag yourself in that photo. You're part of the community.
Or tag people you know.
Don't
tag photos that really aren't the people they are. We do ask that you not do that.
Hey, look, Bob Dole was there. What?
That's not Dole. That's a Yeti. Yeah, I went there.
You went there, huh?
I don't think Dole has that much meat on his bones anymore.
True. He's about that old robotic.
I didn't notice. Was the Eddie holding a pen? But tag yourself in the photos, and we'll get them posted, and it'll be a lot of fun. But
so, your guys' celebrity interactions were good.
Very good. Lots of fun. Well, of course, Sean and I had a little one-up on you because we got to do a few more interviews. But
and I got to go get more autographs because you guys had already had these.
That's another thing is, I'll tell you about my autograph session because I went in there because Nicola is the only one. I don't have Victor's, but Nicola was the only one I was shooting for this time because I already have Fraser. I got his in person. I already have Deborah Watling because I got her in person, and I got Peter Purves when all three of them were out at Gallifrey 2-3 years ago when I was out there. And so I had already had them and had lovely chats with them. And I knew that we were going to have a bit of a chat on stage with Fraser and Deborah.
We knew Deborah.
We knew
and
Deborah.
Victor.
Oh, we did know Deborah. Well, I told you guys in the back of my mind I suspected that Fraser was going to be in there. So I didn't
They're kind of joined at the hip. Fraser's like, what are you doing? Oh, well, I'm coming to that.
Had I not known that, I probably would have gone and got a little more personal at their tables. But knowing that, I went in to get Nicola's autograph. And of course, she's sitting right next to Colin Baker because there's the perfect pairing there. And I went in there, and I was with Keith, and he knows I hem and hawed because I sit there and going, I could get a twofer here. I could get Nicola and Colin on the same photograph. I don't have any of those. And then I've got Nicola, but I've already got Colin's autograph that Sean brought back to me. And then I thought, but I didn't get that one personally, so this would be me getting it and actually talking to it. So I talked myself into it when I got the two first, which I was much pleased that I did that because then I got to kind of chat a little bit, not for very long because I was a bit starstruck, didn't have a lot to say, but I did tell Colin that he was looking very fit. Forgetting what the connotation of what that in the United Kingdom is, and then went, well, I meant healthy, not fit, in the way. And he looked up at me and said, well, if I was, how do you say it? He said, if I were to say it that way too, I'd say, you're awful fit too, lovely. I said, well, thank you. So I was like, okay. Anyway.
And I'm going to end this interaction before it goes any further south.
I was eating it up. I was like, yeah, there you go. Yeah. Okay, be my boyfriend. No. So yeah, I say that was a pleasure. But that was really the only interacting I kind of did with them because then later I did sit in on their After Who panel that they did. So I got a lot more just to be able to sit down and listen to them.
Yeah, unfortunately I didn't get to sit down on any of their panels. I felt more bad about not being able to sit down for Nicola's panels because I saw Colin at Kansas City Comic-Con and I already have his autograph. But I was at least able to go up and talk to Nicola and get her autograph, and she was very kind and very nice and very friendly, which was always a pleasure.
She looks great.
She does look really good.
She looks so good. I mean, I've had a little crush on Perry most of my life anyway, but
forever.
To see her in person and see that she's still a very lovely lady. Oh my gosh.
And then I also went up and I got Fraser and Deborah at the same time, and that was wonderful.
Did you do a twofer or two separates?
Two separates.
Two separates.
I've been doing all separates. We went up to Fraser first, and Sarah was with me, and we talked with him a little bit, and he was mostly talking to her, which I had no problem with. They were talking about her hoodie, which was the U.S. Army, and they were talking about how he didn't know how some of the bases worked, etc. And we chatted a little bit, and then I picked out my picture, and he was like, "Oh yes," and we talked about the picture from the invasion of how, and I talked to him about how much I enjoyed his interactions with the two of them and how they felt like the perfect pairing to me and how much I loved them always touching each other. And he pointed out like all the pictures of, yes, we're touching here, 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 here. And we just love to touch each other, grabbing each other and,
Yeah, but he was with Zoe in the invasion. That's why I'm confused.
Oh yeah, but no, him and the doctor. Sorry.
Oh, the doctor. Okay, I was going.
My pictures with.
Wow.
I mean with the doctor.
So you were sitting there in front of Deborah Watling saying, "I just think you and Jamie and Zoe and Jamie were so wonderful. The pairing was perfect." And I can imagine Deborah over there going, "Oh, okay."
No, I meant
okay,
him and the doctor.
You and him and Patrick. I got you.
Him and Patrick are the OTP.
I got you.
And then we went over and got Deborah's autograph, and she was so nice. And Sean and I had gone up and introduced ourselves before, knowing we were going to interview her on the panel. And then she still recognized me. And
Deborah is just an absolute delight.
She is
Mel and I got to spend
charming.
just about 5 minutes with her, just outside of her table. She came outside at Galley and stepped out to the pool area just to. Oh, look! There's an outdoors. You kind of get those moments at the con, especially the bigger ones where you're. And she just kind of stepped out and just. You could just see her brighten up, kind of, Supermaning, soaking in the sun, kind of just, oh, there is a sun. And we got to spend just 5 minutes with her just because we didn't want to bother her. But she was just such a delight. And so to see her again was just...
She and very sweet.
She's so sweet.
She asked Sarah and I, "Oh, are you guys friends? Or how do you know each other?" "We're married." "Oh, I thought you were his daughter." We both go, "No."
That's a first.
Huge compliment to Sarah.
Yeah. She's like,
huge uncompliment to Kate.
Apparently I was looking really old on Saturday. I blame the overnight shift.
You do look like you've aged since you've started the overnights.
You were even feeling better Saturday.
Yeah, I was feeling rather sick on Friday, and I was feeling much better Saturday.
One of my regrets is I didn't get a chance to interact with Daphne this time.
Me too.
And I went and saw Daphne.
I intended to go over, and in fact, I went into the autograph room, but she had 2 or 3 people in line. And my initial thought, I kind of waved, and she kind of looked over and waved. And then my initial thought was, well, I'll come back. And so I went back out, and then I just never got back. Well, they ended up moving her out to that other atrium. Or the front atrium area, and then I just for some reason I just neglected that area, and I forgot all about it until we were leaving. And I thought, I didn't stop and say hi.
We did. Mel and I went over and stopped and said hi to her on Sunday, and which was a little bit easier because Sunday was a much slower day than Saturday. Saturday was nuts, but Sunday was a little calm. Just a note to con organizers everywhere: I've figured this out. Here's how you do this: if you're going to do a 3-day con, you start late Friday. Open your con about 4 o'clock. Let people get off work and not worry about taking the day off if they don't want to. Give your vendors and everybody time to set up and be ready Friday. All day Friday you can set up. And you don't have that Thursday night thing to deal with. And then you open Friday and you go as late as you want. Maybe you go all the way to midnight. Who knows? And so you kind of have that late night. And then Saturday you have the big day and you're open all day from 10 to 10 or 10 to midnight, whatever. And then Sunday, we're going to give you a chance to sleep in. We're going to open at noon and we're going to go to about 3.
Yeah, here's the thing.
That's how you do that.
I'll tell you why they don't do that. All vendors will only sign for 3-day con, and it has to be 3 full days because they want to make sure they get 3 full days of sale time.
But nobody shows up.
They don't. But that's, in fact, I talked to Gypsy, and that was one of the things that he said was you've got to do 3 full days in order to get the number of vendors and the amount and the type of vendors that you want to get there because they want it's not worth their time to come set up and just be open for a few hours on Friday, a full day on Saturday, and a few hours on Sunday. So unfortunately, they're kind of caged to that right now. So
I just think you'd have a much better response from people if they didn't feel that, because we've all been to cons where
3 days
Sundays
for small
is nuts.
cons is a lot of days.
It's a lot of
and
stuff.
Once you've done everything, and a good number of people probably did everything they wanted to do on Saturday, so you don't come back on Sunday. And I think 3-day sales will probably be a reflection of that. If they sold a lot of 3-day sales this last year, but the numbers still dwindled, they might realize that people bought passes for 3 days but didn't utilize all 3 days. If it was a hold off and a lot of people didn't buy 3-day passes because they weren't sure what to expect and so they were buying single days as they came, then that might be an indicator of where those go. So it's going to be kind of a look at the numbers and feel for them to see what.
And it's, like I said, it's not just Time Eddy. I thought TopCon was kind of another one of those. But just because if you do a 3-day con and you're there for the weekend, by the time Sunday rolls around, you're exhausted.
Yeah.
So Sunday's kind of a day anyway, and nobody's really feeling it in the mood. Everybody kind of gets to that point where it's like, I'm ready to pack up and go home.
One of the things I liked about Sunday was going there and being even more relaxed and didn't feel pressured because I'd done kind of everything I wanted to do on Saturday, with the exception of Colin and Nicholas panel, which I wanted to get to one of those. But we all ended up, we didn't stay until as late as we could have on Saturday. Keith and Sarah had to actually get back because Keith was working.
On Sunday.
Sunday is what I meant, sorry. We left early because Caitlin, I brought Caitlin, and for people that don't know, I took Caitlin with me, and she was super excited. I don't think it was exactly what she expected it to be.
She was a trooper through the whole thing.
But Saturday, I think she got the most out of it because she was able to do the scavenger hunt, which was for kids 13 and under, so she was able to do that. And the cool thing about that is they gave you a paper that had certain things, like one of them was find a doctor with an umbrella, another was find a doctor with a scarf, another was a companion with marks on their arms, another was a character that's not a companion, those kind of things. And what you did is you went around to cosplayers. If you found these, then you had them sign your paper. And when you took it in, you turned it in, and then they had a drawing. And I think the grand prize winner got a signed CD of Teskadons. What's Victor Pemberton's?
Teskadons?
It just escaped me. What's the full name of that?
Doctor Who and the
Doctor
Teskadons.
Who. Oh, God, why can't I remember that? Doctor Who and the Teskadons. Was a signed CD of that, and then other prizes were these little buttons, the little pin-on buttons that you can get, which Caitlin actually won one of those. And thank you to Colton, who, if he's listening to this, I don't think we stressed enough. Thank you for picking the button up because we were at dinner when they announced the winners. So again, I want to say, I think we thanked him at the con, but I don't think we expressed our gratitude for him going out of his way doing that because we didn't even ask him to. We weren't thinking about it. We left. He was there. He heard Caitlin's name, looked around, realized we weren't there, and so he claimed the prize for her and got it to her. So that was huge thanks, honey. If he doesn't listen to this, I'll send an email out to him or a post to him on Facebook thanking him again. But so that was neat. And then she also, her favorite panel was, which I wish we'd have got to go in and do, but we were doing in the middle of an interview, was the Great Jelly Baby Quiz. And it was only about a 20, 30 minute thing. In fact, Sarah went in down with her, luckily, because I couldn't break away. And what they did is went in this room and they had the guy on the stage and he was kind of a quiz master and he was asking Doctor Who questions. And then if you answer right, he'd throw jelly babies at you to the audience. And she thought that was
such a clever idea.
She thought that was the funnest thing in the world. It was, you got it? Yep, here, jelly baby. And he just, of course, she said, I didn't answer. She said, once I answered right, I didn't get jelly babies for because somebody else had answered. And there was a couple of times that I didn't get the answer, but I managed to get the jelly babies.
There still people were diving over themselves. So, like, jelly baby hit the floor. They didn't care.
Yeah.
It was like, so, and I maybe we should do that.
I think we should.
Oh, maybe we should throw jelly babies at people who ask questions in the next panel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We just tipped our hand.
Maybe we should just throw jelly babies at people.
Why not? But I
just wind up with a whole
very
bag.
clever. And unfortunately, the other cool thing I was looking forward to, but the panel fell apart because somebody got sick and something else happened. But was the Who's Line Anyway they were going to do on Sunday that didn't get to happen. But I think Caitlin would have enjoyed that.
That would have been a fun one too. It's kind of a shame that they.
But she was a real trooper, and Saturday I think she had a lot of fun. Now Sunday she was a bit bored, and that was the day that I had kind of reserved secretly because she was chomping at the bit to go in there on Saturday. To go in because they have one of the game rooms like they do at Planet Comic Con where you can go check out a game and play a game, and she wanted to go try some of the games. So Saturday I kind of left that and we broke off for about an hour and went and played some of the games. So she got to enjoy it. The cool thing was we went in there. I'm monopolizing a lot of our time here, guys. Sorry. I went in there and we knew the schedule. You go in and you give them your ID and they take your ID until you turn the game back in. We checked out a few games. We played. We went with Flux first because we know Flux, but there was a Martian Flux on there that we hadn't played before, so we played that. And that game went rather quickly. Then we did another game, and I don't know if you've heard this. It's called Circus, but it's a spinoff of Blockus.
Oh,
except for you're trying to
circles.
make well, it's not necessarily circles. It's 8-sided octagon. No, it wasn't an octagon. It must have been septagons. Or stars.
Decepticons?
Or stars within those. So you're trying to make shapes, okay?
Yeah.
And you get points for shapes. And it's a really easy scoring system. It was really easy. Real quick, though, again, because there was 2 players. Well, then I realized, we went up to go look for another game, and I realized that it was almost time for Colin's panel. I said, well, can we go listen to Colin's panel now? And she said, yeah, that's fine. And the guy that's running the room had a family sitting there, and they were playing a game, and he goes, well, you should just stay here and play with us. And we said, yeah, if you don't mind. And Caitlin said, I want to stay. And so it was like, absolutely. So Caitlin got to stay and play, and she played Wizard of Oz Flux with them. And they started something else. I can't remember what she told me it was. But she got to play a few more games while I went down and listened to the panel. So
when I went to find you for one of the interviews and went into the game room, and you weren't there, and Caitlin was there with a group of strangers. And I thought...
And only at a small con you could do that.
Yeah.
Well,
that was nice
it's a Doctor Who con. They're friendly people. And I just asked her, where's your dad at? We went to the panel. Oh, okay. You having fun? Yeah. Okay. So that was the end of my concern. But no, we went and Daphne, by the way, says hi. Friend of the show, Daphne Ashbrook, who played Grace, and she remembered. She said, refresh me over. And I said, well, we met you at Galway, but then we had the great privilege of you were on your panel at Planet Comic Con. She goes, that's where it is, okay. And she says, and how are the guys? And so we talked a little bit. And just,
I wish I would have gone and talked to her then.
As always, she's a wonderful delight, and highly recommend if you get the chance to go see and talk to her. And again, all the guest interactions I think were great, and
the other one I had that I haven't mentioned is Peter Purves. I went and got his autograph and talked to him, and he was very, very friendly, very kind, and he seemed like he was maybe a little bored, so he chatted a little bit more than he probably normally would have. So that was an even greater pleasure.
And Colin seemed like he was in good spirits, and
it's twice.
Aw. I was singing. I was taught to sing.
started recording during the day, so there's going to be phones going off because we have lives.
But it was a good all around con. And while we're passing around thank yous, we owe several. We owe one to a friend of the show and the local author Robert Collins, who Robert just. In addition to apparently selling a lot of books at his table this weekend,
he did well this
and
weekend.
having a great weekend. Robert worked very tirelessly to kind of help shag people for us to bring in and promoted the podcast quite a little bit.
He secured people for us.
He secured
Let's
people.
Be careful of the British colloquialism that could have implied.
Fetched.
Fetched work. Secured.
But so thank you, Robert, for that because he worked very tirelessly on that.
Including one of the
you
ones
can shag cables. You can't shag people. That might be the wrong term there.
Including one of the people you won't hear in upcoming, but Mike from the Time Scoop podcast. Hello. It was a pleasure to meet you. And
able to sit down and chat with him.
Yeah, it was a great conversation we had.
He was very early on starting his podcast, and hopefully we were able to lend some help. That was one of the things that kind of happened was our panel for the second day on Sunday fell through. Still not sure why. But
it wasn't on the schedule.
We didn't show up on the schedule. And so
we were there.
We had told a couple of people, and Mike specifically, we were going to do it. And so what we did is we went over there and went ahead and was there available in case anybody showed up. And Mike came by, and so we were able to sit down and chat with him. And Ben, I want to thank Ben Buckles for hosting us. The cool thing was Saturday night, he had unfortunately, we got in late as far as getting our rooms, so we all ended up having to stay off site because the con rooms filled up rather quickly, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And so, but Ben had gotten a room on site, and so he had brought tea with him and some china, and he invited us up for tea and hosted us with tea and some conversation. And he talked a little bit about his panel that he did on Friday that unfortunately we all missed.
Yeah.
But
which is one of the ones I really want
me
to
too.
see.
And but he went over a lot of the things he talked about, showed us some of the books and some of the correlations, and discussed with us a little bit of what he talked about in his panel, how he related things. And he had Junos had his room kind of Brited out. He had a pillow and the little bear had the little bridge thing on it, and
some picture frames on it.
Some frames on the armoire, whatever it was.
Well, and on the nightstand.
Oh, did he have some on the nightstand? I didn't see the one on the nightstand.
Royalty on the nightstand.
Oh, I did see that. Okay, I did see that. I didn't see that. And anyway, he hosted us for tea and conversation and biscuits. And
the tea was wonderful.
Caitlin enjoyed that probably. I had the what was that? What I had the
it was all the same. We all had the same
Prince Wales, but I had did we?
Yeah,
I thought he was giving.
Well, no, we all had Prince. Well, he handed out I think a couple of other packets, but he wanted us to have the proper.
Okay, so
Prince
it was the Prince of Wales that we all had. Oh, that's right. He gave the different.
Even though you drank it neat.
Wrong.
I'm sorry. I like my tea. How I like my tea. Yeah, I knew as soon as I was going to say nothing in it, I knew he was going to look at me like, what? But yeah, I'm sorry. That's just the way I like my tea. To me, it becomes sweet water when you start putting stuff into it. You don't get the tea flavor. So anyway, and Caitlin actually had a good time. Now, mostly because he was handing out biscuits, which for us Yanks, that's cookies. So my daughter probably ate about 8 of the cookies. She tried the Jammy Dodger. She did not like the Jammy Dodger.
There was a different Jammy Dodger than we were used to.
She tried what was similar to, it had a lot more raspberry on the outside. It wasn't as covered with the small hole. It was...
the raspberry wasn't as spread out.
Yeah, exactly. It was a thinner layer of raspberry, too, I thought.
Yeah, and the biscuit part was a little less graham cracker cookie-ish and more actual cracker.
Okay, I didn't know. I thought it was more shortbread than it was.
Yeah, but there was still a little bit more than.
It wasn't as sweet.
It wasn't a sweet shortbread at all.
Okay,
we're quite the connoisseurs. Of
so now, and then, but and of course, he had chocolate chip cookies there, so and the little Milano type ones, so she quite enjoyed that. And then as we left, he had told us a story about how he had followed up Peter Purves and Courtney. I forget her last name. The gal that
Ellis
played,
George.
Yeah, Ellis George. He followed that up, and so a lot of people had left, but some people had stayed. So he recruited one of the young boys that was there to he had a lot of, what he does is he gets Doctor Who magazines to fill out his collection, but in order to fill out his collection, a lot of times he has to buy them in lots just to get the 1 or 2 he needs. So he ends up with about 10, magazines, and he pulls the 2 he needs, and he has all these extras. So what he did is he brought them and he gave them to this boy and said, would you pass these out? So what he was able to do is give everybody in the room a magazine, a Doctor Who magazine.
Everybody
We're talking classic magazines from
everybody
the 1980s.
Who came to his panel got a
90s.
Doctor Who magazine.
Everybody came to his panel got a magazine. And he did his thing. And then he said later, somebody came to him that had heard that they'd given out free magazines and asked, and he says, yeah, you weren't in the panel, so you don't get a magazine. so everybody got a nice little treat that stayed for his panel, which I thought was nice. Anyway, knowing that we had missed the panel and had to get the brief synopsis recap, he had magazines waiting for us that we could pick out as well while we were there. So we each took a magazine with us as well when we left from his hosting us that night. So.
And thank you again, Ben, because it was a really nice way really to end Saturday.
Yeah,
it kind of was a nice wind
nice
down.
nightcap. It certainly was. The interesting thing about it too was we interact a lot with Ben online mostly. Even though he's in Topeka, we've always wanted to go. He has a Thursday night, Friday night Who Watch every week where they went through the entire catalog of everything.
And they're still going.
They are still going. And we've always meant to, but we all have those schedules that we can't. And so a lot of times we'll see him at different occasions or at different events, and we get brief amount of times to talk to him, and we don't ever get to really engage as much. It was nice to be able to sit down for a good hour and really kind of talk to him and kind of just get to know each other. And so that was a lot of fun. It was nice to really to be able to sit down and finally talk to him about a lot of things that we all have in common. So quite enjoyable.
Who am I forgetting? I wonder that we had another thank you that we needed to throw out, and now it's escaped my brain.
Well, obviously, all the Sean Bourne with is that how you say his last name? With Kansas City Time, or not Kansas City Time, Hoovians of Wichita. He was actually working security. I didn't know that, but until he said, it's an easy con to work security. There's not a lot of problems. I got to chat with him real quick. He did invite us to a party in the room, but we were so exhausted, and by the time we had gone and met up with Ben, I was
and then still having to go and check in,
I still had to check in, and the cold was just smacking me in the face about that point, and so unfortunately we missed the Hoovians party, but. Maybe next time. But thank you for the invite on that.
Yeah, definitely.
And thank you to Kieran, the organizer, who allowed us to be a part of this convention.
We're gonna sign off, and I'm gonna drive home and then go.
That's
who it was. So we'll have to listen.
Well,
again.
thank you to everybody, each and everybody that was there, and we just covered everything.
There we go. It's blank cover. But no, we hope if you this was your first con and you were there, we hope you had as good a time as we did. And certainly, if you joined us at one of the panels, we did New Who, which was so much fun and just a delight to sit and talk with everybody that was there. Thank you for that, and we hope you found us through that. And
some great questions, too.
Great questions, and just I think what really touched me was when the group of I'm going to call them younger kids, but even though they weren't, but when they came up and said, we just love the fact that you guys are like, know who is bad who, and they were just so excited about that. And it's just like, oh, I'm touched. That really made my day. That was an awesome bit. And anybody who joined us then later for the very awesome Victor Pemberton and Fraser Hines and Deborah Watling panel that we got to moderate there. That was not that there was much moderating with Fraser, but.
Not that you can moderate.
Not that you can moderate Fraser, but
it was a lot of fun talking to those guys.
Yeah.
They're a hoot, and they really play off each other really well. It was really just a lot of fun to listen.
Even after all these years, you can tell they're just great friends.
Yeah.
But we have a few treats for you on this show. We were able to actually sit down and do some one-on-one interviews as we were there as well. And
we were. I had the great fortune Sunday to sit down and spend some time with the legend, Mr. Peter Purves, who played Stephen on Doctor Who, opposite the First Doctor.
Stephen Taylor.
And
almost said Tyler.
Not Tyler.
Not Tyler.
Not the singer. The
astronaut. Wymie taught us that.
The astronaut.
And we also got to spend some time with Mr. Lars Pearson, who is the editor, publisher over at
Mad Norwegian
Press.
And they're the ones that do Chicks Dig Time Lords, Chicks Unravel Time, About Time, right?
About Time.
All of those
Running
great
Through Corridors.
Yes.
They've got a lot of... They do a lot of different genre stuff, but they do have a specific Doctor Who genre stuff that they do as well.
Most recently, Companion Chronicle.
Yeah.
Which was a lot of fun to talk to Lars. And then we're going to lead off with another legend, Mr. Victor Pemberton, who was around during the second Doctor's tenure and very involved in some behind-the-scenes aspects of the show, including being a script editor for Tomb of the Cybermen and the writer of Fury from the Deep, and is, unfortunately not credited, but should be. This is the man that created the sonic screwdriver.
Yeah.
It was his invention.
Well, I guess he's credited because his name's on the story in which he wrote. I thought you were going to say he's an uncredited actor as well.
He's an uncredited actor as well.
He plays a scientist in the moon base.
He's an extra.
Yeah.
But Victor's a joy to talk to, and I think that'll come across as we get into that interview. And he's a lot of fun and wealth of knowledge from that era. So,
all right, well, let's give those a listen.
We're talking with Victor Pemberton.
You are. I think you are.
I think I am.
Yeah.
Who is obviously a very long time association with the show. You were credited as script editor on Tomb of the Cybermen.
That's right.
Which we just recently watched. We actually watched that Friday night kind of to refresh.
Yeah.
And one of the stories that I remember coming out of Tomb is when they're getting ready to go in, they've just opened the tomb. And the Doctor and Jamie are supposed to take Victoria's hands and walk her into the tomb. And apparently Troughton and Fraser had worked out something ahead of time where they grabbed each other's hands and started to move forward, realized it, and then broke it off. Were you on set that day when that story happened?
Yes, I was. I was on set for most of the time.
How did you react to that? Because I know the director was a little flustered, but realized they didn't have time to reshoot it.
But you see, Patrick was an instinctive actor. For an actor, the business is very important. Business is very important. Homework is very important. Things that are impromptu are the best.
Yeah.
Things that you don't work out too much. And that's more natural. And I was there. And I know that Morris Barry, who was the director, he was very fussy, but he was a great character. I was also on the set when they first see the tombs. And
it's a brilliant set.
Yeah, it was brilliant. When you consider the size of the studio, which was just like that, with the wobbly sets and everything, I was terrified. Being the writer, I really had no right to be there. But if you've put your hand on the set or got too near it or something, the whole thing will go over. But they built this marvellous set. And there were all these, I think it was 3 above and 3 below, I think. But I remember going into the studio, and the only thing that worried me was that it looked too bare. And I said to the designer, I said, wouldn't it be a good idea if, when they gradually come out with the spooky music and everything, if you put some dried ice in there, into the thing, and then as they open it, obviously, well, you've probably seen it, then you get all the kind of condensation of the ice and everything, and it worked beautifully.
Well, and it's a masterful piece that it's a very long sequence.
It is.
Where the Cybermen, they bust through the windows and the fog is pouring out, and they clamber out, and then they come out to the sides, and they come down the ladders, and the music's playing. And it's one of those things that I've watched it, and I've watched it, and I've watched it. And as a film student, I watch it, and I marvel that it exists. Because in my mind, that's something an editor would have gone back in later and gone, we don't need this, it's atmospheric, but we're going to cut and get to let's get to the chase. And I love the fact that it's there, because it's something that it's so atmospheric and tremendous of a moment that this is happening. And I love the fact that it just happens, and the director just let it unspool and lets it happen. It's phenomenal.
It is. It was beautifully conceived, I must say. And I was very lucky to get the job as script editor on it. I'd already done a little bit of editing. I'd been assistant script editor on the Ice Warrior,
which is another great one.
Yeah, a friend of mine, Peter Purves, was in that with the walking stick. You remember the cane, as you call it. And also, I was around when I first met Debbie when she first made her appearance in The Evil of the Daleks. So I did a bit of preparatory work as a trainee script editor, really. But then I came into my own with that, and working with people like Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis was a learning curve for me, because you had two supreme talents. You had Kit was the scientist, and Jerry Davis was the dramatist. Now, as a script editor, I never believe anyway that the work should be tampered with too much. If you like something and you've accepted it under commission, then there is no need to rewrite it. Little alterations, make sure that the continuity is there, but don't just rewrite it for the sake of your own vanity. And there was a lot of that went on at that time. And they taught me an awful lot, because they're two different concepts were merged into one. And it was very exciting to work on. Very exciting. And I liked working with them. Kit Pedler was fairly uncommunicative. He was quite a low-key man, and he didn't speak much. But his work was wonderful. Yeah. So...
It's another one, too. It's impressive to me as a science fiction fan.
Yeah.
To be able to go back and see... I mean, obviously, the Cybermen have been a long-standing part of Doctor Who, probably second only to the Daleks in terms of popularity and whatnot. But when you break it down, the core idea of the Cybermen is this replacing of worn-out organic parts with these, bionic
before
limbs.
Its time, wasn't it?
It's so pure. I mean, I have to go back and do some more research, but in my mind, I think it's probably the first televised cyborg.
Yeah.
In the terms of science fiction. And that's something that it just amazes me that what you guys did in the 60s with this show is just...
Yes.
And I get a little riled up when I talk to new fans. And I mean, I'm great. We've got new fans. Fantastic. New Who fans. Fantastic. But when they come along and they go, I can't watch the old ones because they're in black and white.
I know.
And I just want to shake these people. What's wrong with them?
That's weird.
The stories what matter.
Yeah.
The stories are phenomenal. I mean, the stories were good.
I have said to countless generations over the years, I've said, think about the story first and the special effects afterwards. Because without the story and without the writer, you have nothing.
It's a lesson that I think has kind of been forgotten quite a bit in Hollywood today with a lot of the blockbusters. And I'm encouraged that maybe they're figuring it out. I see little signs that maybe, I hope it's not just a flash in the pan that somebody had this nifty idea, but I think they're starting to figure it out.
I hope so, because I'm an addict. I'm a film actor, a movie addict, and always have been all my life. And that's why I have a great respect for Who fans, because I was a fan, but I was a fan of movies in my own period, and I love them.
What's your favorite movie?
You're not going to like it. Gone with the Wind.
It's a beautiful film.
It's a piece of material. I mean, it's really good.
Well, it's, I first saw that during the war, and it's never left me. It's just, do you know why I like it? It's because it contains all the elements of drama, everything you can think of. It has the drama of movement, the drama of spectacle, the drama of relationships, the drama of characterization, the drama, the colour, of course, the music, of course, which sweeps you.
Yes.
Yeah, it does.
Sweeps you.
Very tasty.
And it's also beautifully worked out. The performances are just magical, So that's why. But having said that, coming right up to date, when I came over on the plane from Spain, I looked at a film which I thought was absolutely wonderful, called True Story, with James Franco.
Oh, James Franco. I haven't seen that one yet.
It's and Jonah Hill. And I thought, now Hollywood, do more of this. Do more of this. The smaller scale films. I mean, in many ways, it could almost be a radio play, because there are lots of duologues, two people. But such good acting. And American film acting is some of the best you could ever know. And I sat there entranced by it, and I've told my people back home, get copies of it, So that's what they should do. There's always a place for the big epics.
Yeah.
Always. But they should do more of these.
Yeah.
Because when they do them, they're totally good. And it reminds me of when I was young, because they used to do films like that, But see it if you can. It's wonderful. Wonderful.
I'll add that to my list.
Yeah.
Didn't get it.
True story. But anyway, as you can tell, the Doctor has been a great influence on my life. It's about all of us. On all of us. Mainly, I think, because none of us expected it to turn out like this. Never knew if it would take off in the States, because years ago, I know it just went out on PBS, didn't it? Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, it's too English, but just recently it does seem to have taken off. But I actually think that there's more hope for better quality American movies and television with some of the stuff that HBO have done lately.
Yeah.
There's some very good stuff on it. And I don't always manage to get it in Spain. But when I do, I mean, Game of Thrones is extraordinary, isn't it?
Now, where are you at in Spain?
Where do I live?
If you don't mind me asking. I don't know
do you know Spain?
Your home address. But
Well, you can. I live halfway between Valencia and Alicante. A few weeks ago, I went on a tour of Spain. I thought, I'm living in Spain, I should know more about it. So on my own, I drove in my car 4,500 kilometres. And I went around all the major cities.
I had the great privilege of being on the other end of the stage from you yesterday at the
Oh,
panel,
right.
So
Oh, good.
we thoroughly enjoyed that.
Talking to the lads, Andrew and Nev, the writers. It's lovely. I always thought to myself, oh, God, it's going to be awful. There's going to be a rivalry between us. Not a bit of it.
No.
They were so complimentary to me, and I was to them, because they represent 3 generations. And it was lovely. And they're so nice, and we're all going to meet up again.
Well, that's good.
It's wonderful that. There's no rivalry. No rivalry. And after all, my generation was so different. I said to them, writing in my time was very simplistic, very straightforward, but the stories were good.
I was going to say.
Stories were good. And they agreed. But it's the first opportunity I've had to meet and talk with writers for a long time. And I appreciate that. When we get together, we discover new things. Every writer has their own way of working, their own way of discovering things, and so on. So it was a wonderful experience for me.
Do you have any advice for the listeners as to what to watch as far as episodes, or
of Doctor Who? Well, You see, I don't watch Doctor Who very much now. It's not quite my era. As I said to you earlier, the Doctor was an old man in my time, or he was a grandfather figure, or an uncle figure, an old uncle figure. So I don't really care for the young Doctor Who. But that's me. I'm an old fogey.
You should try Peter Capaldi. I'd be interested to get your.
Oh no, he's the first one I thought, what good casting. I really do, because he's a fine actor.
He's magnificent.
He is. He's done a lot of Shakespeare and the classics and all, and he's got a good background, and he's very good. But I haven't gone for the younger set. That's because I'm an old fogey.
Is there anything else you want to...
I could bend your ear all day, but I think we'll let you get back to your thing. Thank you so much for coming and talking with us.
My
Greatly
pleasure.
appreciated.
I am Lars Pearson. I am publisher and editor-in-chief of Mad Norwegian Press, which is a maker of science fiction books in Des Moines, Iowa. And we mainly do guidebooks to television shows. My particular expertise is Doctor Who. We do such books as About Time, which is a multi-volume series that puts every Doctor Who story in the social and political real-world considerations which was made, and tracks the production of television along the way. Because, to truly, I think, appreciate Doctor Who, you have to stop and think, what was the world like in 1964 versus 1972 versus 1985, and so on and so forth. So that's what we do. We have 7 volumes of that out, and Volume 8 is being worked on. And we also do Running Through Corridors, which is Rob Shearman and Toby Haydock's grand sweeping rewatch of Doctor Who. And, they do it. They try to always emphasize the positive. And that's really so great, because as fans, we can get very critical. And Rob, being a writer, and Toby being a stage performer, they have such an interesting perspective on how the show is made, always through the lens of how great they think it is. We did the Chicks Dig Time Lords series, which won a Hugo Award, for which we're extremely grateful. And the latest of those was out, called Companion Piece. We do Space Helmet for a Cow, which is the mad true story of Doctor Who, or the behind-the-scenes story of Doctor Who all in one go. And then with Lance Parkin, I co-write A History, which is the seminal timeline of Doctor Who that puts every Doctor Who story on a single timeline from the beginning of time to the end of time, with copious amounts of footnotes, and it's now about 150,000 words bigger than War and Peace. Oh my gosh. So, yes, it's vaguely terrifying just how much more Doctor Who we have, because when Lance did the first version of A History with Virgin back in 1996, he didn't include the comics, but all he included was, there was 159 episodes of or stories from the TV show, plus 50 novels. So the first version of A History included like 200 stories-ish. Now, we produce that like every 2 years. I mean, the books, the audios, the comics, the everything. Now, the last digital 2-year update for A History we did, that had something like 225 stories in it. So Doctor Who's gotten truly berserk. So if we do get around to doing a 4th edition, at that point it will probably include 2,000 stories. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So I've probably written or edited 30 books on Doctor Who. I also came from the field of journalism and comic books, so I used to work for Wizard Magazine, which was basically the Rolling Stone of comic books of its day. But I left. Once I'd left them, of course, there was no point in their staying in business, and they just went under entirely. No, they struggled on. They were a great company to work for. I really enjoyed working for them. But they didn't seem to survive the jump to the digital age. So now they're a convention company.
Let's go back to the volumes of the books About Time. How do you go about putting those together and getting the mindset of this is what was happening at the time at the same time?
Yeah, I am fortunate enough to work with mad people, and I say that in the nicest possible way. So Tat Wood, it started out with Tat Wood and Lawrence Miles were co-writing them. Tat Wood is the sort of person who can remember the favorite sport of a B-level British politician from like 1971. I mean, he is this tremendous, eclectic slush pile of knowledge, and I say that in the most flattering of ways. So Tat is just, I don't know, he just oozes culture from every pore. Sometimes you can mark the direct A to B in the influences in Doctor Who. Like, you look at the Keys of Marinus, which is story number 5. There's a scene in the later episodes where someone is escorted along a corridor and then very visibly shot and killed. And that is a direct A to B from the murder of Jack Ruby, which, who was, the assassin who killed, he shot Lee Harvey, it was the murder of Lee Harvey Oswald, that's what I'm trying to say. The public murder of Lee Harvey Oswald by Jack Ruby. So you can see the direct A to B, and sometimes the influences are more subtle. Sometimes, it's not necessarily the Doctor Who was drawing in an A to B. It was drawing on, an aesthetic that was around at the time. Like, you look at a story like The Mutants, and it resonates with another property called Solaris. Now, did the people who make The Mutants blatantly rip off Solaris? Well, no, not necessarily, but it goes to the design and the sensitivities of the people who were around at the time. So, and then you have to track the production of television because, of course, when Doctor Who starts out, it was never filmed live, but it was filmed as live. I mean, they basically their editing abilities were very primitive. They were going out weekly. They were making this show with the expectation it was going to be seen one time and never watched again. And then, of course, television gets more sophisticated as it goes along. I mean, what they're able to do with Doctor Who today, the production team in the 60s would have stormed a beach over because it's truly incredible. But it was a very studio-bound show, and they did a great job with it. So it helps me. What pains me, sometimes people will look at an old story and they'll think it's crap. And the question is, well, is it genuinely crap? Or is it just that it had the indecency to be made in 1968?
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it. Some of it, is crap, and you can prove that with graphs. But sometimes it's just no. For what they could do at the time, this is actually very well written. It's very well acted. It's very well made. It's just old. I worry that with each generation that goes on, except for television historians, we'll just look at old stuff and we'll just well, this is old. And we just don't have any... the more we go on, we'll start to lose comprehension as to what television was like in the 60s and be able to process it that way.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shows that, some of your favorites ones that, are kitsch.
Yeah.
You look at the 60s Batman or the things of that nature, and it's like, no, it's not. It's just that it's a product of its time.
It's absolutely a product of its time. Well, it's funny how... It's funny newcomers who start to watch classic Doctor Who, and I encountered one of them recently, and I was like, well, how did you like classic Doctor Who? She says, she says, I had to stop watching. It was too misogynist. The thing is, I don't think it is misogynist. I can understand the viewpoint of someone watching it from today. The gender issues are different. Many in the 60s, some of the companions are genuinely girls. For all their fantastical knowledge or talents, Susan, Vicky, Dodo, Victoria, they are girls. And so if you're in the audience, you can feel like the men get to go out and do all the cool things, and the women don't. Now, balanced against it, of course, a lot of female characters Doctor Who are extremely strong. You've got Barbara and Leela and Romana and Sarah Jane and all the rest. But I can see how someone sitting there watching it, without any context, can think, oh, this is just the female characters are treated too shabbily. I'm not going to be watching this. If you have a better appreciation of the time, then it can start. And I keep saying, well, yes, it depends which story you watch. You can find a story where basically Barbara is basically standing around doing nothing and think, oh, the women get short shrift. But then there's going to be other stories where Ian is standing around doing basically nothing. Yeah. So it sometimes balances itself out. But I understand the concerns. But yeah, I think it's that jump is becoming increasingly difficult for people to make.
Is that something, not just within the time, but within some of the other lines of books? Obviously, you've got like Chick Stick Time Lords.
Yeah.
Things that has there been a kind of a concentrated effort to try and maybe broaden the spectrum just a little bit on the perception of it? That
was basically the whole effort behind Chicks, was because what happened was there were a lot of women in fandom when the show was on in the 80s, and then during the Wilderness years. There definitely was a decline in the numbers. I mean, the conventions got very bloke heavy, and so when the new show came back, suddenly a lot of women were there again, and so we wanted to give them to kind of amplify their voice. We want through Chicks Dig Time Lords, we wanted to give them the opportunity to offer their perspectives, and as you say, concentrated together in one book. The last 5 years, we certainly haven't, within the creative sphere, we haven't approached gender parity. But you are finding more female writers, you're finding more female artists, so I think that's good. With every year that goes by, you hope that we more and more, like Marvel Comics is doing a great job promoting their female characters. So you hope with every year that goes by, the need for that voice to get out there won't be as urgent because women will have been part of the process from the start. I mean, they'll just be, participating in the DNA of the creative sphere. I mean, but it takes time. I mean, you look at the number of Hollywood producers who are women, and it's shocking. I mean, the men just out. We just need more women making the product is what we need. So yeah, but I feel it's gotten better over the last 5 years than when we started Chicks.
How do you go about getting those essays in Chicks and any of the other ones? Do you put a call out? Do you say, submit your essay and we'll consider it? How do you go about that?
No, we don't do an open cattle call, if you will. Well, essay books are hard because writers are like cats. And with essay books, you basically have like 25 to 30 cats you have to organize, and you have to make sure that they're not being overly redundant with one another. Because, the writers are just independently doing their best work, but so if they're completely duplicating another writer, they don't know, but you, the editor, you know. So you have to get a lot of different viewpoints, have a lot of different variety. And no, it's going around and finding a mixture of pros who will bring some name power to the process, and then some semi-pros who are quite talented but don't really have that professional cachet yet. We were extraordinarily fortunate in Chicks Unravel Time to have Diana Gabaldon, who created the Outlander series, and she makes no bones about the fact Outlander is based on Jamie McCrimmon. I mean, as much as anything, Outlander is kind of her extraordinarily best-selling fan fiction of Jamie McCrimmon, which is why Fraser Hines did a piece in one of the recent Outlander episodes. So yeah, you go around to the high tier people and hope that because of the nature of the topic, they will give you an essay. I mean, I'm sure Diana Gabaldon has a full plate, but we were extraordinarily fortunate that she contributed. So it's a mixture. It's a mixture of that. You get the pro level people. You fill out the ranks with the semi known people, and make sure that it's. Funnily enough, by the way, I don't actually like essay books as a breed, because when we came to do Chicks Dig Time Lords, I said, well, the problem I have with essay books is that quality control gets very difficult. In any given essay book, a third of the essays are pretty great, a third of them are pretty terrible, and a third of them are pretty, average, which means that the overall quality of the book is pretty lousy. So if we do this, I want not every single essay is going to be an A, that's impossible, but the overall quality has got to be pretty high. And it's got to tell us something we don't know. I said there's nothing more... the example I keep coming back to is this years and years ago in an essay book, this Star Wars essay that had the title something like Boba Fett, Rogue Bounty Hunter. And then the essay proceeded in great detail to explain how Boba Fett is a rogue bounty hunter. And I just said, for God's sakes, tell me something we do not know. So that's what I ultimately hope is achieved through our essay books, is that you're reading them, and at least, again, not every single essay, but at several points, you'll be sitting there going, oh, good God, I hadn't thought about that, or good God, that gives me a deeper appreciation of that person's point of view. That's the goal. And then, of course, we did an offshoot of that called Queers Dig Time Lords, which is basically the same thing. It was Doctor Who through the lens of all things non-hetero, which... Of course I'm biased, because of course I'm making these books, but, oh God, the quality of the essays in Queer Dig Time Lords was fantastic. And John Barrowman gave us an introduction, or John Barrowman and his sister, Carol, gave us an introduction for which we were deeply appreciative. So, yeah, that's always a goal. I have a very low boredom threshold, so I'm always like, tell me something I don't know. No, seriously, tell me something I don't know. And through these books, I hope that's what we've accomplished.
What's up next for Mad Norwegian? What do you have in the pipeline?
It's in some measure it's more the same, but I'm waiting for Running Through Corridors 2 to come in, Space Helmet for a Cow 2, About Time 8, and I'm hoping to get those manuscripts very soon. In the interim, because of course this is what I do. If I've got a short span of time, I feel like, well, I might as well write a book in the interim. So I'm working on a Doctor Who 101 project, because I have now given dozens of Doctor Who panels at conventions on where do I start with the classic series, where do I start with the new series, where do I start with Big Finish. And at a certain point I thought, I might as well stop, drop, and just commit this take like 10 weeks or whatever, commit this to paper. And that way when people ask, that way I can go, and for more information you should buy. It's so gratifying with the new series that it's lasted long enough to keep generating new generations of fans. And, I mean, it is sobering to think that it won't be that much longer that people born when Christopher Eccleston debuted as the Doctor, will soon be going to high school. And so there's always a continual refreshing of the audience and a need. You reach the point where you think, oh, well, everybody knows what a Dalek is. Everybody knows what this is. Everybody knows it. And they really don't. You don't know what things are until you're actually told. Or Doctor Who having a 50-year legacy, you can just, if you're not careful, completely drown in the amount of information that's out there. So yeah, I'm doing Doctor Who 101, and those books are coming in, and I feel like I'm forgetting about some. We have actually, at any given time, about 8 books in process. I just don't always talk about them because I've learned to try to only talk about things when I actually have it in hand, and there's a release date, and it's up for pre-order on Amazon. With the series I just mentioned, well, those are in progress. But for especially if it's something new, I'm just not going to talk about it until the product page goes up on Amazon. You can order it. So.
It'll be interesting to read that and then go back with how we introduced Keith to Doctor Who and see where we went wrong.
Yes. That would be helpful. Yeah.
And of course, you guys cover several different genres. But do you ever, like on specific genres, do you ever consider? Doctor Who obviously very popular right now, so it's a wealth of information and things that you guys can focus on and publish around and whatnot. Do you ever worry about when we hit another point where we go into another wilderness years period where maybe it kind of subsides again, or the fandom's just not there anymore? Do you ever worry about that concern, or is it because you kind of have enough cards on the table that you can kind of go different directions?
You do diversify as much as possible, which is, again, we did some Chicks books on things. We did Chicks Dig Comics, we did Whedonistas. You diversify as much as you can. With another wilderness years situation, well, first of all, we did fine during the wilderness years. I mean, if anything, the advent of the new show, for which I'm eternally grateful, is what killed our novel line, Faction Paradox, because we've been doing... So we had this spin-off series, Faction Paradox, which is spun out of the novels, and we were doing pretty well on it, and then the new series came around, and it actually made our sales drop, because what I came to realize is... The Christmas Invasion, when they put out the promotional photos for that... I realized there were more people debating the merits of Rose's jacket than were interested or could be interested in our new Faction Paradox book. So if we had a wilderness year situation, we'd just adjust accordingly. But frankly, I don't worry about it, and the reason I don't worry about it is because the new series is so successful that another wilderness year situation, I presume it's all going to happen before we shuffle off this mortal coil, but it's so far away. I mean, didn't Stephen Moffat recently say something like that Doctor Who has a global audience of 77 million people, and it's this, and Doctor Who Series 8 was BBC Worldwide's #1 selling show. And I know that the BBC has more concerns than just commercial concerns, but it is so enormous and so huge and so popular and so beloved. The day might come that they cancel it. But it is so far off, because think about it. If they canceled Doctor Who right now, what could they possibly replace it with? What has the reach, the popularity, the audiences, and the merchandise machine that Doctor Who has? The BBC doesn't have... They're not Marvel Studios. They don't have anything to replace it with. So I mean, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure that day will come. But I can't see it. Or again, it's so far down the horizon. It's not.
I think in that same sense that you said that Faction Paradox was popular at the time, and then the new show kind of killed that.
Yeah.
But I think because of that, you guys were feeling the need, because there were people in the wilderness
that
were looking for those other avenues.
Absolutely.
So I think in turn that could happen again for you guys if you would still be there to kind of carry on.
I
see. And Faction Paradox is still around, but and that's great. And like right now, it's with a publisher named Obverse, and we they seem to be doing very well with it. But yes, it really took off because people didn't have Doctor Who to as much occupy their headspace. And so when we gave them something that was Doctor Who related, and which I think was very good, then they really went for that. So yeah, we just adjust accordingly. So, the Wilderness Times creatively for Doctor Who was actually a very... a great time. I mean, you had the new adventures, you had the audios, you had... There was some great stuff being done. It's no substitute for the new series. I mean, absolutely positively. I'm thrilled to have the new series back. So yeah, we just adjust accordingly, and And again, we diversify as everything. I don't put all my eggs in the Doctor Who basket, but it's a good basket to have. It's a trans-dimensional basket, yeah, so it's all right. Yeah.
And where can our listeners find the books at?
We do have a website, madnorwegian.com, for information about them. We don't sell direct. You can find them basically anywhere. You can find them on Amazon, Amazon UK. If you're in the United Kingdom, we sell through Forbidden Planet. And really any mainstream retailer. Our distributor hits Baker and Taylor and Ingram, and through them, all the major bookstore chains. Whether or not we're on the shelf depends on what the store manager had for lunch that day. Store managers still have an awful lot of power, which is fine. So if you walk into any given Barnes & Noble, we may or may not be on the shelf. But certainly you can order us through them. So basically, I mean, it's a cliche, but yes, wherever books are sold, we can be found. Or again, Amazon is just easier out to go. And about 2/3 of our catalog is for sale as ebooks as well. The history ebook was something of a. It's. I think it's brilliantly useful, but boy, that took like 125 hours to code. I mean, that was nightmarish. I love these people who say, "Oh well, ebooks are so easy to do." It's like, yeah, if you want them done badly, then I guess that's fine. So yeah, so madnorwegian.com for information, or we're on sale anywhere books are sold.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, very good.
Okay. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate that.
Peter Purves. I was companion to the first Doctor, 46 episodes of Doctor Who in 1965 and 1966. And I'm here still talking about it? Wow, what's that about? Yeah.
Now, you've had a very long career in British television.
Well, I'm very old.
I didn't mean it that way. But obviously, you started off on Doctor Who, at least for where you kind of hit the radar for us.
That was my first serious major work, I suppose, because I'd played the lead in a couple of television plays before that, and I'd been an actor for... Well, I started in 1957 as an actor, and I joined Doctor Who in 1965. So I got 8 years' experience as an actor before. I worked in what you would probably call it the equivalent of summer stock, but it was all year round. It was called weekly rep.
Oh, okay.
And in a repertory company was a group of actors, director, designer, and that's about it. And we did a different play every week. So you started rehearsal on a Tuesday, worked your way through till Saturday, and on the Monday the play opened. Then on the Tuesday, you started again doing another one. So it just kept on, it rolled. Sometimes we'd bring in extra actors to make the cast slightly bigger. We could do bigger plays if we could get other actors in, but there was no money. I mean, I was paid an absolute, nothing. I mean, it was very, very little money. And I did that for 2 years. But it was a great experience because I didn't go to drama school. And probably the best way to learn without going to drama school is to just get up and do the job. Yeah. And you attack it, you're bound to make mistakes, but you learn from the mistakes and you don't do them again, and you gradually get better and better, and you spread your repertoire of abilities in the theatre. And I did all that. Then I went to London. My first job was touring with a rep theatre company, and toured for 5 or 6 weeks in an Agatha Christie play, Witness for the Prosecution, it was called. And I toured in that for 5 or 6 weeks, a week in each place we went to. And then I did one more play, and then I auditioned and got a part as in the chorus, singing chorus, in a big show at the London Palladium. And which I think probably is a theatre that most people have heard of.
I've heard of that one, yes.
And it was, this was a show that actually was supposed to run for a year. It ran for 3 months because it was so bloody awful. It was a dreadful show. It was called Man in the Moon. It starred an English comic called Charlie Drake, who I have to say was dreadful. He wasn't funny. And even when he was funny, I didn't find him very funny, if you know what I mean. And anyway, so I did that. Came out of that and started trying to get television work. I worked as a dresser for the chorus in another show in London whilst I was waiting for work. I didn't have anything to do, so I used to go in the evening and sort their clothes out so that the show ran smoothly. And then I got a telly part and then I got another telly part and another one. And I probably did about, 10 fairly well-known and regular series, small parts, Then I played the leading guest part in something called Dixon of Dock Green, which was the original cop series in British television. Very old-fashioned. I starred a very good film actor at the time called Jack Warner, and I played the lead in that. And then I got the lead in a major play for television, not a classic. I've never wanted to be a classical actor particularly, and it was called The Girl in the Picture. And I had the lead in that with a young actress called Nicola Paget, who you may know in the States if you ever saw a show called Upstairs, Downstairs, the original one, which I think did come to America. And it was the first real leading role for either of us. And it was reasonably successful. People liked it. We got nice reviews for it. I played the lead in one other series called The Villains, just one episode of that, with one of the two leading parts in that. And then Doctor Who came along. In the meantime, I tried to play a part in Doctor Who. Went to see the director called Richard Martin to play in I think it was the Web Planet or something it was called. It's the one anyway that had giant insects and butterflies, and I was going to play one of those. No words to say. And the night before I went to see Richard to audition for one of those parts, which I'd been asked to go for because I moved, because I was in the chorus at the Palladium earlier, so I must be able to move. I couldn't. I was a terrible dancer. But because I'd been in the chorus, they thought I could dance. And I went in to see him, but the previous night they'd shown my episode, my play where I played the lead with Nicola Paget, The Girl in the Picture. And I walked in, and the first thing Richard said after greeting me, he said, "Look, I'm not going to give you one of these parts." He said, "I saw your play last night, and you were really very, very good in it. And this part's, you're better than that. There's nothing for you to act in." And he said, "I promise that when I'm doing something worthwhile with a decent acting part, I will think of you." Well, I took that as a pinch of salt because it's what directors say to actors when they'd like them to go out the door and never be seen again. So I left feeling rather depressed. I was broke, had no money, so there was a job I didn't get, and I was fine. But he was as good as his word, and that's how he cast me as Morton Dill. Just rang up and invited me to play this character. I don't care whether it was any good or not as an Alabama accent, but he was a hillbilly from Alabama who was visiting New York. And I had a comedy scene for about 10 minutes with, first of all, the TARDIS and the Doctor and his companions, which then went away, and another time machine arrived, and out came the Daleks, and I had another scene with them. The only person probably to get away with taking a rise out of the Daleks and not being exterminated. And at the end of the recording of that, I was invited to go over to we called it Studio 3. It was across the road from the Riverside Studios in Hammersmith in London, which is where we did the show. And Verity Lambert and Dennis Spooner, the producer and story editor of Doctor Who, said, I don't know if you know, but Russ and Jackie, that was William Russell and Jackie Hill, are leaving in 3 weeks, and we wondered if you'd like to replace them. And the rest, as they say, was history. There you are, I've given you a potted history of mine.
It's an amazing debut, as you pointed out, for this kind of one-off character to have a scene with the TARDIS and then turn around and have a scene with Daleks. There aren't many actors that get to pull that one out of the hat right off the bat.
But it never occurred to me that it was there was anything unusual. It's just going in to play a part, and you go in with the naivety of a young man who just go for it, just do it. It's like I said, you make mistakes when you're in rep and all the rest, and you get a chance then to improve and get better. That's how you learn. Well, I just went in and played a guy from Alabama, how I thought a guy from Alabama who was rather gauche and naive might behave if something like a TARDIS arrived whilst I'm visiting the Empire State Building in New York. I think it works quite well. I find it funny when I see it now. I'm not embarrassed by it, and I'm not one of these actors who say, I never watch myself. No, it's rubbish. You have to. If you don't watch yourself, you'll never learn. You'll never get any better at anything you do. So I always watch whatever I can. The sad thing about when I did Doctor Who on a regular basis, when I played Stephen, was that I could rarely see the show. You couldn't record it because we didn't have domestic video recorders. So there was no way of seeing it if you were out. If you might be doing you might be doing opening a fete or something like that, a gala somewhere on a Saturday. You didn't see the show. It was a Saturday night. Often it was when you went out anyway, and so I didn't see an awful lot of the episodes I did do. I mean, the saddest thing for me is I don't think I saw a single episode of The Massacre, which is my favourite one of all, because I remember it being good at the time, and I know from the audio that it was very good. It was a good production. It's beautifully directed by Paddy Russell, but I've never seen it, and nothing exists, and I never will see it.
Yeah, it's
very
one
sad.
of those that, even with the theories that abound, that maybe they're still out there somewhere, which I personally want to believe.
Well, so do I, but, pigs might fly.
Money aside, which do you prefer? Do you prefer stage acting or do you prefer television?
I think now, for example, I'd be pretty scared about doing a stage play. My memory's not as good as it was. I can remember a lot of things from the past, the old stories that I can tell. I remember things quite well like that, but I'm not sure how well I would remember a script. If I had a leading part in something, I think I might struggle now. I don't know. Television now is so much easier. It's not a difficult medium to act in. In fact, lots of non-actors get away with murder on television. It's easy. You can do it again and again. If you get it wrong the first time, you do it again. I've only worked in live television for most of my career. You don't do it again. You do things in one take. If it's got to be, that's how it is. When I followed Doctor Who with this show, which doesn't get seen here in the States, but many people have heard of it. It was a children's program called Blue Peter. And to explain the title, everyone says, what's the title of that? If you see a merchant ship about to sail from harbour, I think 12 hours before it sails, it flies a flag which is called a Blue Peter, and it's a white square on a blue background, and that means we're about to sail and we're off on a voyage. And the title was devised because this was a voyage of discovery for kids. It was a children's entertaining but educational show. It wasn't meant to be educational first, it was meant to be entertaining. But it was a magazine program, could go anywhere, and that's why it had the title Blue Peter, which I thought it's a very nice title.
And that's something you did that for nearly
10 and a half years.
Yeah.
10 and a half years. Yeah, I took the job for 6 months, and I stayed for 10 and a half years. It was a good job.
You're very well known for that in England, and you're right. It doesn't something that you're a fan. This is Glenn. Glenn's another member of our podcast.
Hi, good to see you, Glenn.
You've seen some Blue Peter.
Yeah, just
far
clips.
More than I have.
Yeah, clips. Yeah.
Well, you've probably seen the Doctor Who clips.
Yeah, most of them are on the extras on the
yes,
DVD.
I think they are. Yes, it's it's a strange, strange thing. But
it's strange that the two of them kind of that they have that symbiosis in a way that so many of the Doctor.
Because I'd been in it, it was a perfectly reasonable thing. But of course, Doctor Who being a BBC programme, if there's something that was interesting about it, well, it makes a very good item for the kids. It's a children's program. Doctor Who was a children's programme, so why wouldn't it?
Sure.
Why wouldn't we do it? I mean, I did stuff with John Pertwee. We had the Who-mobile in the studio. I know we did something where we did all. We sort of made a theatre, I think, and did a Doctor Who play within that theatre, puppet theatre. It wasn't puppets, they were cutouts and that sort of thing. There was something else we did. In fact, I think on one occasion we did Blue Peter in the Doctor Who set because there'd been a strike by the scene shifters at the BBC or the electric. I mean, for some reason we couldn't have our normal studio, and we did part of the show from a Doctor Who set. So I mean, we did overlap from time to time, and I don't think we were the only ones. I think Doctor Who kept on cropping up on Blue Peter at some time or other. There were only about 3 times with me.
Yeah, it's fun now that there's that weird symbiosis that Doctor Who became such a big cultural icon, and especially in England, the Blue Peter with the kids became such a big thing.
Yeah.
And that so many of the episodes that wound up disappearing and getting lost, that whatever tiny little segments still exist exist because of Blue Peter. So it's there's a strange symbiosis in that regard.
Yes,
too.
I suppose so. I mean, I understand that. I think one episode of Doctor Who was returned from Blue Peter and it had been wiped. I mean, I don't know how true that is, but I have heard
it's
that.
It's the William Hartnell's regeneration scene, isn't it?
Yeah.
The actual
doesn't
regeneration
exist.
does not exist except for the clip.
The clip where yes.
So
I think probably what happened was that was lifted from the original for playing into our program because we would only have the segment that we needed, and I think there were other segments with the Daleks at some time because a Dalek went missing, and I think we had a clip which. From Doctor Who showing the Daleks in action, and then the one was stolen, and we did a whole feature about that. It was found in the back alley near some old lock-up garages behind a block of flats somewhere in Shepherd's Bush. I don't know what people thought they'd do by nicking it, but anyway, that's what happened. Things get stolen at the BBC. It's quite a big thing to steal, isn't it, a Dalek? But they had worse. People came up and took pianos, grand pianos disappeared, How do you get that? I mean, do me a favour.
With a piano.
Yeah.
Well, you have, and I do not mean this in any way as a backhanded compliment. So, as a fan growing up, when I went back, because I started with Tom Baker, he was the one that was available here in the States when I was growing up. Yeah. So as I've gone back and watched Doctor Who, it's been very kind of sporadic in how I can get my hands on it.
Yes.
And I saw a lot of the early William Hartnell with Ian and Barbara and Susan, and then it was kind of a gap before I got to anything else. And as I've gone back and started, you kind of have a distinction of being a lost companion for me, just that I didn't know anything about Stephen. Yes. I mean, I get the book and I know that Stephen's in there, but I didn't know anything about him. So as we've done this podcast and I've come to these Stephen episodes, I have just had my whole mind open.
Yes,
Stephen is a phenomenal character.
Oh,
He's a lot of fun to watch.
Well, that's very kind.
And I thoroughly enjoy it. Anytime we put one on the schedule, it's like, oh, Stephen's in this one, and I get very excited just because it's, not something
that's nice. Thank you.
I just want you to know how much I appreciate that.
Well, no, that's very kind. But I mean, I like playing him, and I mean, it was a job, so of course I'm going to like it, But I mean, I did like playing him, and I liked the character. I liked him. I thought he had, he had some good values, and he was argumentative with the Doctor, and there were all sorts of. That's why, of course, when I did Galaxy 4, which was the second serial of which, of course, only one episode exists. When that script arrived, Stephen's character did not appear. I mean, Stephen was in it, there was his name. Stephen says so-and-so, but he didn't do the things or say the things that Stephen would say. Because it wasn't written for Stephen, it was written for Jackie Hill, but they couldn't change the story because that was the story that had to be shot. That was, the time scale and everything else meant that. So I had to play this character who really wasn't Stephen for 4 episodes, and that annoyed me immensely. I wasn't pleased with that. But I guess I did it okay. I've seen the one episode that was found. I mean, we had a launch of it down in Cardiff in Wales. And I saw it, and it's got all the mistakes and errors that you have in the original series of Doctor Who, wobbly sets and all sorts of things, and things that were a bit incongruous, and Bill doing an occasional fluff and all that sort of thing. And my performance was okay, but it wasn't an heroic part, which I had been led to believe Stephen was going to be that kind of character. I mean, the interesting thing for me Doctor Who keeps on reinventing things that have already been invented, if you like. Because I've always said Stephen was really Captain Jack back then.
Yeah, he really was.
That's same. There were similar elements in that, but they didn't give me a spin-off.
We should work on that. We should.
A bit too old for me to play it.
Is there with the missing episodes, whenever there's an announcement made that we found something, is there a part of you that kind
of course, I keep on hoping it's the Massacre or the Mythmakers, or even the Savages for that matter. I mean, the Savages I'd like to see, because I really have the only recollection I have of it is what I got from the audio, and to be honest, so long ago since I did those. I think that I did them back in 1990 something, or maybe just in 2002, something like that. I've forgotten it again now. I'd have to revisit it, listen to it again to know exactly what happens. It's the memory's not holding up on that at all. So I'd quite like to see that. But also because what I do remember about it was that I absolutely adored the director. It was Christopher Barry, who was just terrific. What a lovely man, beautiful. Later on in my life, when I had my own video production company, and we did corporate videos and things, I used Chris a couple of times to direct stuff for me. In fact, I used two of the Doctor Who directors. I used Eric Martinus as well. So, yeah, it's. I have some nice memories and all that. And Stephen, I'm fond of Stephen.
I'm looking forward to the day when more people can have the revelations that I've had, that these characters are out there. I mean, again, we've got new Who fans, and it's fantastic that they're coming to the program, and I hope that they're going to come in, as I have, and kind of find some of these hidden gems that are just found. Sure. I would be remiss if we did not mention Glenn's favorite episode.
And what is Glenn's favorite?
Gunfighters.
Oh, that's why not? For a long time, I didn't like it. For the reason, I guess, that I didn't think Rex Tucker had any time for me. I don't think he liked me. I don't think he liked Jackie. I don't think he liked Bill. He had, of course, history with the show because he was passed over for being the producer of it. He was one of the senior directors at the BBC, and he was passed over as producer. So he didn't get probably what he wanted from that right at the very beginning. And I think he felt also it was a bit of a come down for the senior director to be there having to direct a children's serial. I think there was a bit of that as well. Consequently, he didn't give me any time. I was never very happy with the song that I had to sing. Not for any reason. I was a singer. I mean, I don't have no track with that, but it wasn't in a key that I liked, which made it difficult to sing it properly. I could have done better if it had been in a different key. What I did enjoy, and where I guess it was probably good that Rex didn't interfere, all the little elements of comedy that are in there, which are mine, which are just looks, people, double takes, tripping over my spurs, dropping the gun, all sorts of, just little things. I just put those in, really expecting him to say, no, we don't do that, Peter, or when you do that, do it differently. Nothing. No direction, no nothing. So I just carried on doing those sort of things. And I think the scene I think it's called Don't Shoot the Pianist, isn't it? The episode. I mean, I think it's funny. I think it's funny.
It adds a certain charm to it.
Yes.
It's sort of it's like we're not taking ourselves too serious, but we're not doing absolute comedy here either.
Yes.
And I think that's what is appealing about that.
Yeah.
And you pull it off. You have these little moments that are just it looks like you're just really having fun with the part, but also taking it serious as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But I mean, the good thing about the Gunfighters is that it's a very clever way that we are integrated into the plot. It's the mistaken identity of the Doctor is a cracking idea. That really works ever so well. I mean, when he comes into the bar, the saloon, and he doesn't know that the Clantons think that he's Doc Holliday, he announced himself as the Doctor. And they're ready to kill him. They get their guns out. I think it's fun.
I think a lot of people also pick apart the fact that it's not very historical accurate, and I think especially here in the United States because we know American Western history so well.
Yes.
But I think that you can't take the history of the OK Corral and things like that and make it a children's fun, applicable thing. And so I think in kind of changing the story a little bit and making it what it is, a Doctor Who story, I think that gives it a little bit more charm too, because it's still an element of the Old West that we all kind of appreciate and here really cherish. And then on the other hand, you've put it in a different kind of spin or a different scenario. I think that's what makes it quite enjoyable too.
Well, I mean, it was the same with the one that doesn't exist, the Mythmakers, which really was splendid. I mean, I loved that, and I loved working on it, and I liked the other actors who were there. We had some good fun with that. And the Mythmakers, of course, the whole story of the Siege of Troy is probably, well, it isn't historically correct. In fact, Troy may not even have existed. No one's sure. If it did, it was in Turkey somewhere. We're not sure. Anyway, That element, Doctor Who can always muck around with the history like that. But things like the massacre, which is, again, this was an absolutely ghastly period in French history. I mean, it's quite dreadful. I don't know if you've ever seen the prints of the massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve. There are several, which are old prints, etchings and stuff, which are done illustrating the thing. I mean, the murders that took place throughout Paris on St. Bartholomew's Day were absolutely horrific. Anything ISIS is doing now, they were doing it then, and it was really awful. And to make that into something palatable for children, you've got to be careful. Of course, we leave before anything happens,
right.
And that's how we got out of that. But it's a cracking story. The OK Corral, everyone knows it vaguely anyway. Even in the UK, we know it vaguely. There've been enough Wyatt Earp films in the past, and of course there was one very good major film version of it. Again, I'm told that isn't totally accurate either, but I mean that's beside the point. So something was borrowed from it. Donald Cotton wrote this script which worked, and it worked as Doctor Who, and I think that's acceptable.
Yes, yeah. You were talking about the massacre, and I think that's the one that I kind of hope that they find.
Oh, me too.
Because you're such a central character to that. Because we've got the Doctor Who's the mistaken identity of, I believe it's
the Abbot of Amboise. Yes.
And so in that particular story, you get a lot of kind of room to be the star because you're in it. Just from what I've seen on reconstructions and listened to in the audio,
yes,
you get to kind of shine there, and you get to be the star. You're kind of the hero of that one. And I watch the reconstructions, which are a lot of just the snaps of it, that they put together.
Yeah.
And I look and I think, I really want to see how your acting came across and what you did with this character, and you can you can hear it in the voice, but you can't necessarily see it. That's what I really find.
And it was a very good cast as well. Yeah, no, it was like that. Interestingly, the original story by John Le Carrotti is different. There is much more. We see the Doctor a lot more. I mean, we lose him for a great chunk of it, and this was the first opportunity to see if the series the show still worked with Bill in a more minor role. He doesn't have a minor role in the original story. There's a lot more of what the Doctor does. The only reason I know that is I've just read it on a BBC audio book, which is available now, and it's the original story. It is a different telling of the same story. And it's well worth listening to. The differences are remarkable. Stephen does not lead that quite so much. He does, but he's a bit lost during it. The Doctor does a lot of things, and the Abbot does a lot of things. And there's a couple of very gory things which couldn't possibly have been. We couldn't have done those. And Donald Tosh, who was the story editor, he virtually rewrote the scripts that Donald Cotton that John Le Carrotti had written. So it's interesting, just purely on the basis that it's a different telling of the same story, but that's the original. That's where it came from.
Very good.
Just real briefly, I wanted to touch on your Big Finish work. I know that you've come back to Stephen, and it sounds thoroughly like you're enjoying yourself with it.
It's the Big Finish productions are, I think, exceptional. I listen to them in the car. I don't listen to them at home, but I do listen to them in the car. And the production values that are added after we've done the voice recordings is just fantastic. They design the sound properly. And the output of Big Finish is enormous. Yeah. The number of releases they do, how on earth they get done, I do not know. The sound editing is fantastic. And the stories have given me the opportunity to learn about Stephen, which I would never have had the opportunity to do had I still been in the show and doing that. I mean, Stephen is a different character from the one I even understood him to be. People like Simon Guerrier and our other excellent writers have given Stephen a totally new lease of life. And I love the exploration of his character after he left the show, after he left the serials. He stays on this planet, and from then on there are stories. Obviously they're done with flashbacks because it's still Doctor Who, but it is exploring Stephen in a very different way. I mean, in one of them, I'm 70 years old, which is even younger than I am. But he's 70 years old in the story, looking back, and it's great. So I think it's called The War to End All Wars, which is a super story. And there are 3 that take place it's almost a trilogy that takes place after I left Doctor Who. I've loved what Big Finish has let me do.
And you were able to do another one with Gene Marsh, with reuniting, in a way, Stephen and Sarah King's character as well, which
I've done two. I've done 2 with Gene. I think one is called The Anachronauts, which is a great story. That's a super one. And I think what's the other one I've done with her? It's very recently we've done one. I think is it The Early Adventures? It's about the first immigrants from the West Indies coming to Britain. I can't remember what it's called. It's a new release, and it really is. It's a terrific story, and I can't remember its title. It's gone from me. I've seen it this morning on one of the vendors' tables there, but I can't remember. I just can't remember what it's called.
Well, the Iraq.
The Anachronauts.
Thank you. Anachronauts is a very imaginative story, too.
It is.
And you got to do a little bit of... Because, of course, you guys are kind of recounting the story, and it's half Gene's character, half your character.
That's right.
And you get to do a little bit of the dialogue of the First Doctor as well, which I think you do a very good William Hartnell doing.
This is one of the things I'm really quite proud of. And the more... When it was discovered by Big Finish that I could do a reasonable interpretation of Bill Hartnell, it's not perfect. I'm not saying it sounds like it. What it does do is I have a consistency with him that I can carry on performing, and he's acceptable as the First Doctor. I believe in him. When I listen to it, I sometimes do think, no, of course it's me. It's one of those silly things. Because they discovered that I did that quite well, and particularly Simon Gerry, who I mentioned before, he's written bigger and bigger chunks. So they're harder and harder to do because I'm switching voices. I'm Stephen arguing with myself as the Doctor and doing those. And we don't do those as separate lines and then it all gets edited together. It's just doing it along. If there's too big a gap between me finishing one line of the Doctor, if I'm interrupting myself as the other character, then the sound editor will take that out. But mostly he doesn't need to, because I switch. I think Fraser works in the same way when he does Patrick.
The other day, yeah.
It's fun. It's fun to do. I'm doing one next week. I fly home tomorrow, which is Monday, and the following Monday and Tuesday I'm doing another one with Maureen O'Brien, which is great. Can't tell you anything about it. I'm not allowed to. I'm not allowed to.
Well, thank you very much for taking some time out of your schedule and coming and sitting in. I know our listeners are going to get a big kick out of hearing this.
No, you're very kind. I've enjoyed it. It's been great fun. It's been nice. I've never been to the Midwest. And it's interesting. Found some great restaurants here in Wichita. We've been to 3 different ones, and all have been really rather good. Okay. So I don't know where we're going tonight. It better be as good. But it's been fun. Thank you very much.
And there you go. So hopefully you enjoyed those interviews.
And thank you so much to my gal Mel, who is, if you enjoyed those interviews, she's really the one to thank, because she was instrumental in getting all of that set up and keeping us on task and providing the guest wrangling in some regards to, you have to go do this at this time because I've set this up for you. And it's okay, because I get in there and...
It's wonderful when Mel's there, because she's always kind of our field producer for these kind of things. Because she recognizes that, number one, first and foremost, we're just kind of enjoying ourselves because we're so wrapped up in what's going on. She does too. She enjoys herself too, but we're so wrapped up. Number two,
part of her enjoyment is going to...
Well, we're being shuffled from here to there, doing panels or making sure we get things squared away and taken care of as far as what we're doing personally for what we're trying to do. And so she's always very good about, okay, we're going to get this guy. So she's always out there field producing for us and getting those little behind the things out. And we owe her an immense of gratitude for that.
Well, and you heard her. She apologized afterwards because I didn't really mean to be on the Victor panel or in the interview with you. But she says, I just, he was a joy to talk to. And again, you heard it as it just kind of came out of that he was so much of a blast. So hopefully we can have him back on the show again and maybe get a little more in depth with some of the stuff that was going on. But I just kind of let him go.
And some other stuff that we didn't.
Yeah, there was a ton of stuff we didn't talk about.
There's so much in his life that we haven't touched on.
And I'll be remiss if I don't give a quick shout out to Sarah, who actually helped out with Caitlin a lot, because a lot of times she would hang out with her. She helped her with the
scavenger hunt.
And then she also took her down to the panel that she was really looking forward to seeing. So.
I think Sarah enjoyed having someone to hang out with. While I was off.
Especially while you were.
Because, we get tied up in things. Yeah. So.
Well, that's going to do it for this week. For this special episode, if you like us and enjoyed what you heard here, we are on Facebook, Traveling the Vortex, Twitter, @TravelVortex. You can or if you really liked what you heard, we have a Patreon account set up where you can go and subscribe to us and give us your precious hard-earned money that we would highly appreciate.
My precious.
You're precious.
We all want you to start sending us rings now.
We also for yourself. I'll take them.
If you're interested, we also have a Spreadshirt store where you can go and buy Traveling the Vortex merchandise, as well as an Amazon link on our website where anything you purchase from Amazon through that link will go directly towards us. We're also on Tumblr, Goodreads, all the different places. And you can, of course, if you found this through iTunes, visit our website at travelingthevortex.com.
If you visit us on iTunes and you like the show, please give us a review on there as well. We haven't asked for that for a while, but we'd love to have your review, good or bad. We prefer 5 stars, but, whatever you feel.
Be honest.
That's right. Be honest with us.
And if you have feedback that you'd like to send us about something that we're doing or something we're going to be talking about, we read feedback out on the show when we have it, and we'll happily include you in that family as well.
You can either do that by feedback at travelingthevortex.com or on the website.
There is a form you can fill out on the website.
And one other small plug, if you found us, we do have a fun social event every week online that we call Friday Night Who. We get together Friday night at midnight, virtually, and watch a episode of
Saturday morning.
Technically Saturday morning at midnight. And this week happens to be because this is going to go out this week, isn't it? I can say that. We're going to do Warriors from the Deep, which is a Peter Davison story. # Friday Night Who.
It's a live tweet along.
And it's a live tweet along on Twitter, which we were doing this before it was cool, thanks to Glenn. He was the one that really pointed us onto this. Now everybody does William Shatner live tweets to his show.
William Shatner live tweets to not his show.
Yeah, whatever he watches.
Anything he's watching.
Anything he's watching, he live tweets along with it. So, but you can join in with other Whovians and have some fun with that. So,
all right. Well, that's going to do it for this side trip. I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.